Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to the first roundtable for Coach's Corner. I've been really looking forward to doing this one from myself watching roundtables and just being really immersed in the discussion. And tonight we have three absolutely incredible minds, three guys who have built a business and a team around them that is helping them, I guess, really change the landscape of the strength and conditioning industry. And with COVID, we actually all managed to get all three of them here right now, which is probably a difficult task to do if it weren't to be. So first we've got Jamie Smith, who you can see behind here on my shoulder, perched like a bird. Jamie runs Melbourne Strength Culture. He runs an absolute fantastic mentorship program as well. I'm sure everyone in this room knows who he is. The information he puts out and the stuff his team's doing is unparalleled in the strength and education market at the moment and powerlifting scene. Then we have Dharam. Dharam has more experience in this industry than probably most of us combined. And there is 30 people in the room, so that's saying something. Dharam is Core Advantage, an athletic development gym in Melbourne, and they are at the absolute forefront of the industry there. Dharam has a wealth of experience. If you haven't caught our chat from last week, I really encourage you to go and do so. I really enjoyed that one. And then we have Ben Scott as well from STC Fit. Ben and I had a chat yesterday. Again, another really enjoyable experience. And I really like the way Ben goes about his approach and his direction with his kind of niche that he's built. And Ben is developed into an extremely strong coach. He also runs a mentorship program, much like Dharam as well. And he also runs a podcast that I've been diving into, and I also encourage. That's STC Fit Learning. The best thing about all these guys, they all run mentorships, they all have podcasts, and they're doing what we all are striving to do. So that's my quick introduction. Now, the first question I'm going to ask, and we're going to address the elephant in the room, and that is COVID. So I'm going to ask the roundtable guests, what is the state of the industry going to be like post-COVID? And is this the death of the commercial gym?
Who wants to go first? I guess I'll go first because I think I'm the commercial gym guy. Without most of our team being in the commercial gym. Is it the death of it? Definitely not. Is it the cleanse we needed? Maybe. Are there a lot of trainers that maybe weren't taking their career as a career that may not be returning? I expect so. Some of the numbers I think I've heard in just around the traps, I suppose, is sort of 50%. Reduction in rent model trainers in certain big box clubs, which it's alarming, but it's also maybe not so much. I think the standard of people that are going to come through now, with the median of each trainer in that club being much higher, I feel like if you survived COVID, you probably have a little bit of business now at least, and I would expect you're an okay coach as well. And I say coach, not just like a trainer, like a spectator. So I think, new guys coming in will reap the benefits of a higher standard being expected in those facilities as well. I can't see, it sounds like there's a few, particularly in the States, and a couple here that are gyms that are going under, but I don't think the big brands are going to disappear anytime soon.
I agree with all of that. The only thing that I would add on to it, I think, because when you think about, so this last time I checked, Fitness First and Good Life are both owned by the same company, along with a whole bunch of those 24/7 sort of franchise companies. Thinking like Jets or Zets or whatever it's called. I actually have no idea what all these things are called. I've never been in a commercial gym. I was in a commercial gym for about 6 months. But when you have a big, not monopoly, because I'm sure there's other companies, but when you have a big business that is really running the whole show, I feel like they're not just going to fall over and die. It's too much of a profitable industry for them to own those clubs with 5,000-6,000 members who only have 2,500 that are active. The rest are just all on a payroll, really. So I don't think they're going to fold or fall over per se, but I like the idea of the cleanse. I think that's definitely the way I would frame it, because as we know, and I know Durham would attest to this, having done it, but Ben and myself wanting to build careers long term, and I know this is something that you talked about with Jared just yesterday, but it's a different mindset to build a career compared to just get money quickly and just work as like a fresh coach. It's a completely different mindset that you have to adopt. And I feel like the coaches that are doing that and have already started doing that will be fine. Like, you'll have systems, or you would be building systems, or you'll be changing your models or doing something to evolve in this time. Even with us at Strength Culture, like, we're completely flipping the way that we're doing things to make sure that if COVID were to happen again, it won't be as damning in that first maybe month. So I think the coaches that do stick around in those big box gyms are the right people that we want in the industry anyway. The other ones, maybe they never found their feet and they just came in at the wrong year, or potentially it just wasn't the best fit for them, and this may just be the push out of the industry that was unfortunate but needed to happen for them. One of those silver lining type of things where they can find their voice in their real career. But I think the biggest thing is that it is a cleanse. I really, really like that. So I see a more fruitful post side of COVID in the way that, like, a winter would clear out or a winter would kill a lot of the vegetation to then lead to spring and actually have a very fruitful other side of this. And we saw it in that 2 weeks that we were allowed to reopen. Like, it was fucking full blown, probably the best month of business we would have had. And then it got shut. So we know that the people that are around, the opportunities will be there. So I don't know if it's the death of them. I think it will be a little bit of a reframing, and potentially maybe just see the exit from the industry from a lot of those coaches that maybe weren't in it for the right reasons, but they would have been found out at some point anyway.
Just one note on that before Durham jumps in. I was reading stats, I think yesterday, actually, New South Wales gym attendance numbers have actually surpassed pre-COVID.
Yeah. It would have, from what we saw anyway, and I know you don't have a gym yet, Ben, but I would have, like, just with leads and stuff, like, terrible year to get that ball in motion. But again, career mindset, it doesn't matter. The time will come. That 2-3 week period we have, we were going, like, leads were flying in, people were excited, numbers were up, like, everything was just, it was good, it was fresh, it was fun. So we know that will come again, but and I'm sure that a lot of coaches will be feeling that same stuff. But I'll shut the fuck up now. Durham can take over.
I tend to agree. I think the cleanse is, it's a real forced consolidation of the industry. So you're going to see the cream rise to the top. The people that aren't as good, not there. And I just think it thins things out in probably ultimately a positive way for the industry. I reckon also there is an interesting disruption at play as well, which is that everyone that is properly interested in training will have spent quite a few months training in their home gym. And there's a lot to be said for that in terms of consistency, convenience. And so I think that'll be an interesting thing where, just in the same way as meeting over a Zoom 5 months ago would have been this high friction experience, and but it's not really as good as meeting in person. From now on, it will always be quite acceptable that you can do meetings on Zoom. Like, in my wife's job, her boss has said to her, you probably only need to come in 2-3 times a week once this is over, because they've just gotten used. So I think people will interestingly become maybe less tolerant of commuting to places. I think that's an interesting wild card to watch. Like, are people willing to go somewhere? And I think there'll be a hardcore demographic of people with really short memories that are just, like, back in the gym and sweating all over each other and totally fine about it. But there was an interesting variable slice of those people that are like, you know what, I'm done with touching other people's DNA that I don't know. And so I think I'm curious to watch how that all pans out. And also there's the sheer fact that there will be people who have invested $3,000 or more in their home setup, who are like, and they justified that to themselves with, well, that's the next 4 years of gym memberships. I'm sinking into that. So
yeah, that's definitely something we've seen, obviously, with our main cohort of serious lifters being powerlifters. A lot of them have dumped a lot of money into home gyms, and it will be interesting to see how that evolves, because I think it could go either way. You find that quite easy to go there, but it could also be the other way where it's like, oh, it's just in the garage, I'll do it later, and then never actually doing it. But I did want to add one more thing, Darren. There's a podcast and I recommend this to everyone, exactly what Darren was talking about there with the importance of Zoom, or the less friction of Zoom. There's a podcast from Sam Harris, number 194, with Matt, I'm going to butcher this, Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress. And he talks about the new future of work. This was actually the week of the lockdown for us in Melbourne, which was around March 23rd or something. And he's the owner of WordPress, and he discusses how he has staff all around the world and all of the different softwares and things that he uses to allow the whole business of WordPress to be cohesive and actually progressive, and how they've navigated team. Because I'm sure everybody's experienced it, but with Zoom meetings, like that, a little like it can just make a 30-minute process an hour and a half, because you go back and change that. Like in person, it would just be so much easier. But he's discussed all of that with Sam Harris and how they're building these non-location businesses. And I think it's a fantastic way to sort of start to think about how you maybe be able to network with other people, build your team. Melbourne Strength Culture may not just be Melbourne-based coaches, who knows, like those sort of things. It's just a good way to think about where the future really is headed. And I think COVID was the push for the online space. But as he discusses it, man, this thing's been happening for years. It's just, this is the final straw that broke the camel's back that's driven it forward, because we've definitely felt it at Strength Culture, just with our small team of, maybe the online space is a lot easier to navigate in terms of this sort of stuff. Maybe hours at work doesn't have to happen so much, maybe all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Do you guys think this has just accelerated what was already coming?
Yep.
So like even recently having taught the Cert 4 a little bit, I remember getting my Cert 4 for like $800. It's government funded. It was a joke. It was like, I don't really, like most people that came through back then was like, I like sport. I don't really know what to do to make $100 an hour as a personal trainer. I'll do that. Then it's like, okay, courses are a little bit more expensive. They're gradually getting a little bit longer. The standard coming out is, touch wood, getting a little bit better. So people are a little bit more serious already. The gym floor stuff kind of died out in the gyms. Everything went to rent model. And then you're starting to see now, like so many people failed within the rent model. We're starting to see like people want to start their careers at F45, RBT, places where they can earn an hourly wage, cut their teeth, learn to talk to people, learn to communicate, learn to sell. And then all of a sudden it's like, now I'm going to go do like my own business on top of that. And I feel like COVID has just kind of sped that along heaps. It's like, even guys like, if you guys are familiar with the coaching groups like maybe RP or locally like Flex Success, Nexus Performance, those kind of guys that have teams of coaches around the world and the country taking care of people online. It's like there's a trend that's been going that way, more so in bodybuilding, slowly in powerlifting for quite a while. I don't know what it's like in the S&C space if you guys have kind of got on that wave yet, but I feel like that hybrid online kind of model has been evolving for a while, and that evolution of the trainer and the coach standard, I think, improving over the last 5 years has been coming as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I can even think about it like the guys I've been mentoring within our coach development program. The biggest discussion in the last 6 months is how do I build that hybrid model? What are the steps I need to take? How do I build out my online service and all that sort of stuff? And being part of that journey with so many young coaches has actually been really cool, because I've been able to share what I've developed in the last 4 years, which is, as you were alluding to, that it's been happening, but this has just been the push. Like, no, it has to happen. Like, you either go or you're in the weeds a little bit. So I would agree with that 100%.
It was certainly a good push. What do we do, team? We did 200 programs in about 5 days, transitioned onto Team Builder. When I say we, I mean my heroes team. I was pretty much useless. But yeah, it certainly gave us a hell of a push. And it made us good at a new thing. I turned up my nose. I've always turned up my nose a bit at the online thing because it's like, it's not real. You got to be face to face. And I still feel like real personal connection face to face is such an energizing thing for me, at least. But what's been interesting is the online clients we've been getting is you're more likely to get clients that really come to you, not because you're local, because it's convenient. You get the ones that really sort you out. So I just had a new online athlete start up a couple of weeks ago, and she's just crushing it because she's sought us out, not because geography made it suit, but because it was a really good fit. So it's almost like maybe what you end up with long term is athletes that are or clients in general that are much better fit for you because they're not just finding you because they happen to be within a 25-minute drive of you. It's just
walking in with so much buy-in from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the flip side is, and maybe something we haven't touched on though, is like there's so many people, and I know I'm one of them. So I've been online since like June last year. And I've been sort of like looking for a way to get back into face-to-face a couple of days sort of thing and not have to pay $300 a week rent or like a gym rent overhead. And this has kind of really pushed me in a direction. It's like, man, I just really miss hanging out with people. And again, looking at that trend of like the resurgence of barber shops and those kind of services where you actually go and you talk to a person and you get to know their name, and like the boutique coffee shops in Melbourne do so much better than the chains because you walk in and they're like, oh, hey, Ben, skinny latte. Yep, sweet, off we go. So I feel like maybe offering, I guess, a higher end service with your coaching, again, alluding to those trainers and coaches that are going the extra mile a little bit, providing that personal relationship and stuff with clients may actually be even of greater benefit. We might see that kind of shoot up a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely think, and again, this COVID might just push us in that direction with the cleanse that we discussed, but smaller gyms, like we know they're on the rise anyway. They're everywhere. They're popping up. Even Durham is, 2 kilometers from us at Strength Culture, which is probably 13 different gyms between us, just in that, or Jarrett's around the corner as well. So 3 of us on this chat, all within striking distance. But the smaller boutique-y sort of niche gyms, I think will see more progress moving forward as well, especially if we reverse out of this in a similar way, if that ever happens. But with capped on members and all that sort of stuff with the amount of people inside the space, that just delays those bigger gyms as well. So all things to consider depending on where you're currently at with your position in the industry, I guess, or your starting point if you're at a big gym.
I don't know what you're talking about. They've got tape. Haven't you seen the tape that the big boxes have got?
I actually
the room.
I went to a restaurant in Phillip Island and they had a partition wall up, and that was how they divvied up the restaurant. And I was like, I think COVID could cover that. Like I think it could jump that if it really wanted to. Like this thing's going all around the world.
I believe there was
shit.
There was a gym in Melbourne that attempted that to get around the rules. They just put up like a temporary wall through the middle of the gym. It was only like maybe 6 foot high. It's like, I don't think that counts as another room somehow.
I don't think it works out.
There was literally one gym that got like caution tape, like that just, and it was just like, you could see that was just a zone. And then there was another zone. So they turned one gym into 6 zones with tape.
Yeah.
Like, I reckon COVID's
that's what we've been going wrong. We should just be taping up our lounge rooms and no COVID in here, no COVID entry.
But it drove me crazy because we had what was our limit? Was it, guys, it was 20 person limit.
And you could fit 100 people in your...
We could fit 100 people in our gym, each with 9 square meters per person. Like, or thereabouts.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So the next question I want to pose, and I really like where this discussion is going, is how to get back on your feet for the young coaches, the struggling coaches, the business owners in the room that might be doing a one-man show, or the individuals who might be at these big chain gyms that we're talking about. What's something that you would say, go down this road to help you get back on your feet post-COVID?
I would say definitely, as we alluded to, but again, I would recommend listening to Ben's episode yesterday with Jared about adopting like a bit more of a different mindset for career-driven outcomes, being that I don't want to be in this industry for 5 years. I want to be in this industry for 50 years. And I want to take 3 or 4 people along that journey with me. Like that's sort of what I want to do. But that process or adopting that mindset was a bit of a process. I had to go to America to find the mindset under Cressy and then come back and realize, holy shit, this can actually happen. But there's certain things that need to happen in order for you to almost mature into that mindset. Start thinking about things like branding, start thinking about things like content, adding value outside of your face-to-face session, building out systems for education, like onboarding systems, and all that sort of stuff. I think this is a fantastic time to work through that. And one of the things that we do with our mentorship guys is just putting yourself in, if you've never been coached by somebody, go and get coached by somebody that you respect and you may think is a couple years ahead of you. But one of the things that we do with the coach development program is we go through a client journey and what are the steps that need to occur for somebody to actually have a successful first 4 to 6 to 8 week journey with you as a coach when they sign up. You've got to think about things like email templates, think about things like education, think about things like how often you're communicating with that client and what that communication is. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it a face-to-face session? But that client journey and building that out and actually trying to automate and build out the processes for that could be a really good, right now is a really, really good time for you to start to work on those processes. So that's probably one of the actionable things that I would get for anybody who's thinking about maybe starting to transition away from, all right, I thought if you're still in this conversation now and actually wanting to grow your business on the other side of this, I would imagine that is your end goal with all this anyway. So adopting some of those processes and trying to work out some of those systems may be a really good place to go through that. I think that would be one thing that I would give advice for a young coach.
Yeah, because I think one thing is that you might necessarily appreciate at the start of your journey is that it's actually going to be very rare if your career, if things go well in your career, getting a chance to actually have a timeout and a pause for breath is going to be really rare. Like this is the first pause I've had since 1999. You know,
I was 7, Darren. I was pressing pause on my Nintendo, man.
Right, and I didn't anticipate. That's just weird.
Just started school,
and so you know that opportunity to be a year, because it's really valuable thing to be a year or two in and go, okay, stop now, look around, have a really good think about your systems, your approach. Are you in the thick of thin things? Are you doing the right stuff? It's a great opportunity. I mean, it's been the best thing for us as a team and as a business in so many ways has been COVID. Like it's completely enabled us to reconfigure how we're operating. It's enabled us to rip off Jamie's business model pretty hard.
Not the only one. I've seen a few gyms pop up with it. What's going on here?
It's great, but it forced us to really think about what we're doing and ask that question of, are we just so busy managing the wrong things that we're not noticing it? So I think that's your opportunities. You can really pause and be strategic and avoid spending, because you could spend 5-10 years really grinding your way up the wrong hill. It's a good chance to avoid that.
Yeah, I think one of our taglines in our marketing for our Coaches Academy, like our mentorship program, is we've made all the mistakes already. And I think it probably took me. I was the show up, do sessions. This is our workout today. Thanks for coming. I'm off to the beach. I'll come back and do sessions tonight. I was that guy for probably maybe 2 years when I first started. I was busy. I got results like to a point, but it was like, okay, do I still want to be doing 5:30 a.m. till midday, train, go home, nap or sleep at the beach, come back, work 4:30 till 9 p.m., do that 5 days a week? It was sort of like, okay, I really, really enjoy this. I know I'm not providing enough value to my clients to sustain this for the rest of like my life, or at least like put together some kind of career. So I think taking notice of, like, the three of us have all got different mentorships. And I not to repeat myself from yesterday, but finding someone that's where you want to be and learning from them as much as possible, whether you've got to pay for it or you can find free resources, depending on your situation at the moment. Just find someone who's gone through the stuff that you want to get to and just fast track that as much as you can. Because like looking back at like what we offer now, our goal is to get you where I was after 5 years in 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's certainly possible. And I think there's so much more opportunity now with the online space and all that sort of stuff as well. I'm curious, like you guys are talking about COVID sort of like doom and gloom. Speaking from like a company mindset, our overall clientele, I think as of last week has actually increased. Given we're not doing so many face-to-face sessions, the dollar value per client at the moment is probably down, so our turnover is still down. But on average, we've actually increased the amount of clients that we're servicing at the moment. So I think, again, like what to do. I think the question originally was like, what should coaches be doing right now? It's like, how do you service the market right now? How do you bring high level, like everyone saw it the first month when we went into lockdown, it was like powerlifters doing burpees and wall balls. It's like, what are you doing? Like, stop it. Like, you know how to train. Just because you don't have a barbell, you know that you how to move and you understand the principles of programming and exercise. Like, go and apply that. Just find a way to do it without equipment or with a couch. Like, I think we're skilled enough to do that in this conversation. So that would be my advice is how can you find a way to deliver the service you were delivering before or make it better, at least right now in an online model, and or having the ability to move from where we are right now in shutdown to then we open, maybe we close again, maybe we're restricted and you can't fit as many people in. Maybe this thing kind of goes on for another 6 months in and out. Do you have a flexible enough model that you can do both and start putting that together?
Without a doubt. I can guarantee you that we are not servicing more clients at Strength Culture right now. So that's very impressive. Well done.
Yeah, well played. I think the opportunity here too is, so there's that reconfiguring what you do, thinking strategically, stepping back. But there's also that thing about front loading your career long PD. So the reality is, again, if your business and career are successful, the irony is that the more successful you are, the less time you have to invest the time in being successful. So if there is this kind of lull, and like we're all here, we've all got mentorship, so I don't want to be like throwing buy mentorships at everyone, but this is the time to invest in education, like whoever it's with, because you've actually got the time for once. Like I'm embarrassed. I bought the Exos course a couple of years ago. I have not completed that course because I have been too busy. I bought a Mike Boyle course 6 months ago. I have not completed that course. And that burns a hole in my soul because it's just every day there's just so much stuff to do. So there's a pretty sweet thing about having a little bit of time up your sleeve and it being a little bit of not a lull period, but a kind of developmental period.
Recalibration.
Yeah. So there's a lot for that.
Well, Durham, I think that speaks volumes about us. Everyone here is preaching further education. And that's actually how Ben and I virtually met. We're both doing Pat Davidson's mentorship. And I saw his name on the list and go, I've seen this name before. Ben Scott. Jamie was on his podcast. This is great. It's a great time to network. And this is what Coach's Corner has been about. It's been about networking. And what I want to go into with the next question is, to all three of you, what are you individually or as your company trying to change within this industry? And what are the steps you're taking to get there?
I think one thing that I've recognized, I actually made a post towards the back end of I set a goal last year to take an X amount of seminars, external seminars, not just with Strength Culture, but with some other opportunities to talk and all that sort of stuff. And one thing I've realized from this is that I think the process of doing in-person seminars is actually not as valuable as I once put them on a pedestal for. I think the online education space is far better. It's broader reaching. There's more opportunity to add context in what's actually going on with what you're trying to educate with. So that's been a big thing for us this year, or myself specifically, because it's mainly my job at Strength Culture to do that, but to pivot into the educational space a little bit more, and see the opportunity in that to work with more people, not just in Melbourne with in-person seminars, but also you can work interstate or even overseas, depending on your reach and the clientele that you service. So that's definitely one thing that I have seen probably, again, accelerated because of COVID, but it was probably heading in that direction anyway. And I think that there are going to be more and more opportunities to learn from the people that you look up to, not just in your city, but interstate and overseas as well, in all sorts of different opportunities, whether they're short courses, longer format courses, full-blown mentorship, 6-month, 12-month type things, or all that sort of stuff. So I think the educational side of the strength and conditioning or health and fitness industry, I think will be pivoting more and more towards that as this year progresses. But that's probably the one thing that I'm trying to change within the industry for myself. One thing that I always try to envision is what were the questions I used to ask when I was 2-3 years in, and how can I service that guy, that person? The hurdles that I was facing is the things that we're trying to fill up now, and so that's probably the other thing that I'm personally trying to do. Yeah.
I think what we're trying to, I think what I really want us to do is kind of be there's a force of evil on Instagram, exaggerated term, but there's this constant push towards sensationalism, like really cool looking, exciting, dumb shit. And I would really like to, and it's really hard to get good cut through with the fundamentals done brutally well, because they're just not as interesting. It's
not sexy done.
They're not as shiny. Pardon?
Not sexy, man.
Not sexy, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the a high degree of difficulty challenge is, can you clearly communicate really good fundamentals, that the stuff that actually helps you to make an athlete better, make a person get better results? Can you communicate the non-sexy stuff well enough that you actually get traction with that and people get the great results? Because there's still this problem that the stuff that sells is actually not the stuff that transforms. It's a misdirect. So that's kind of what I'd like us to be able to do is really, and it's typical of us. We're always picking stupidly hard challenges, but that's one of the things I'd like to go after. Ask me in a year, I'll probably be like, oh, what was I thinking? But that's what I'd like to do.
Nice.
Yeah, so for us, I guess we answer it from two ways. Like from a client focus, what we've always been about is most of the time fixing people that have done that sexy stuff usually. So for us, it's about tying in, like, yes, good nutrition strategies, yes, good training strategies, but enough education to arm people for a long period of time. So their outcomes are long-term, not just like churning out 12-week before and after pictures over and over again. So from a clientele's perspective, that's what we're trying to change in the industry. From our education side of things and working with coaches and stuff, it is that it's trying to change that 6-month average lifespan stat. It's like, you don't even learn how to sell, never run a business inside your Cert 4. You don't learn how to budget. You don't learn how to communicate. You don't even learn how to coach. Like, you learn, maybe if you had a good instructor, one way how to do a squat. And that's basically it. So I think there's just a really big gap that needs to be bridged. I think it's not good enough to sit back and go, oh, well, like PT certificates just come in cereal boxes. It's like, yeah, cool. What are we going to do about it though? It's like, with the logic, the realistic thought process that's going to change, it's probably not. So we need to do things as an industry and I think take responsibility for ourselves and step up in that space.
Yeah. I like that idea of changing the 6-month lifespan. The churn, slow down the churn.
Yep.
Brilliant. One more from me, and I'm going to throw it out to the audience. And this question is just more, and you guys are in charge of hiring. And Durham, you said this was a team process, but what do you look for in a hire, in a staff hire, from your point of view, being business owners?
I have two rules. I stole this completely from Pete Dupuis. If you don't know who Pete Dupuis is, I highly recommend following him. He's Cressy's right-hand man. But the biggest thing, and we've gone through the process of this on both ends of the coin, or both sides of the coin, you can hire on competency or you can hire on fit. Competency is somebody's hard skill set, what they can actually bring to your team. They potentially may add a new service like strength culture. At the start of the year, we wanted to bring on a nutrition-focused coach. As a result of COVID, it just hasn't happened. It's still something that we want to do down the track, but right now it's not. That would be bringing in somebody with a skill set, competency coming in. Or you could hire on fit, being somebody that fits within your system, within your service, within your model. When we think about it at the gym of strength culture, it's people that just add value to the physical location. And everybody knows this. I use Didier as the example. We took Didier from a big group-based PT role, and he did our internship, and we realized that he was just good value on the gym floor. People loved him. He could literally talk to the 60-year-old mother all the way down to the 15-year-old kid learning to do goblet squats or something like that. He could talk. He studied politics, so he was talking about politics. He just brought this flair into the gym that none of us other gym bros really had, and it was just a cool thing to see. It was a cool fit for the business. So we're like, fuck it, let's just hire Didier. We weren't ready to hire him in any stretch of the imagination, but he just fit in well. We knew he was going to add something to us. So Didier came on board, and then we built the competency with Didier. We taught him our systems, we taught him our structures, we taught him our progression models, we taught him everything that he needs to know to get results and get successful outcomes with his clients. But so there's two sort of ways you can go through that process, and that's the way I sort of frame it with my goggles of Pete Dupuis and his experience before me.
I couldn't agree more. You've got to hire people you really want to work with. I have a simple standard, and it's very difficult to get this right every time, but my standard is I ask myself the question, would I want to work with this person for 30 years? And if the answer isn't hell yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to pick you. And obviously that's a pipe dream, and maybe I'll achieve that with some of my staff. That'd be really cool. I worked in the same gym for 15 years, so I got to know the people in that gym really well. And there's something pretty special about like really long-term colleague relationships. You become an amazingly tight team. So that's my standard. The only thing, and we're always looking for fit. Like if you're a smart, hardworking, great human, you can learn just about anything. Like that can be done. And if your business is going well enough and someone can't learn a skill, you pay someone to come in and do that skill, and then you contract them if need be. But I think having great humans around you is pretty uplifting. The only thing I'd say is probably a mistake I made earlier, which I've beaten myself out of, is there's a real danger of creating a monoculture where you hire people on fit and they're all the same, which is can be a real issue. It's like what Jamie was talking about, hiring someone who fits but is a different type of piece of the puzzle. I think that's super important as well. So it's not just all the same. And so we've got different perspectives on stuff, and you'll come up with way, way better solutions than you otherwise would.
Yeah, I think our business model is probably slightly a little bit different. So when we first started bringing on coaches, we brought them in like a mentorship capacity, but they got to work under our brand as part of that. So we haven't hired staff as such, but we've learnt who we work well with over that time, like who's been successful and who hasn't. And there's, like both of the guys have said, it always comes down to, in terms of the group, it's always come back to values. And then in terms of like, it's particularly in our space and being successful, trying to pair good values with work ethic. If you can get those two to come together, like values that align with you, a person that the group is going to align well with the group. And that, like you said, it doesn't have to mean that everyone's exactly the same. Just everyone at least has the same vision and is on the same path long term. If you compare that with work ethic, I think you're 90% of the way there. Everything else can be taught.
That's the thing. There's a quote. I'm going to butcher it, like I butcher everything, but I'm going to have a crack at it. You can teach someone to teach a squat, but you can't teach someone to not be a dickhead.
Yeah, I like that.
That's the quote of the night right there.
Yeah. When we do start thinking about like hiring people, that's going to be our mantra.
Yeah, we actually, before we had a gym membership option at Strength Culture, the only thing to allow people to train there that wasn't coached by us was don't be a dick policy. And we actually had a meeting once. We're like, should we let this? And we just decided, nah, that person can't train here. So there is a board around us. Don't be a dick in here. That's good. So the tape's out. No COVID.
All right, this is where it gets pretty juicy from now on. I'm going to throw out to the audience. So, audience, if you have any questions for the panel or you want to direct a question specifically somewhere, now's your time.
Is Dobbo in here?
Dave is here. I've seen him.
We're going to get some questions.
No pressure.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can. You got to change your settings. Does anyone have a question?
Dave Dobson, please don't let me down, mate. You've normally got some rippers.
Oh, Lyndon's in here. It's crazy.
I don't have any questions at the moment, but one thing I'm seeing at the moment is a lot of people like Pat Davison, Angus Bradley. A lot of people are putting very controversial posts out, and it's like what you were saying before, as it's not sexy, but it's the stuff that cuts through people. And the real content, the real values in the comments, like Pat Davison's cutting down people by asking why is it RDL better than something else, and just cutting down people. So I think that's a really interesting trend that's happening in the moment. It's not a question. I thought it'd be good to see what you guys have to take on it.
Angus would love the fact that you've just said that him and Paddy D's posts are on the same tilt. That's great. I'll make sure he hears that. But I think one thing that I definitely appreciate this quality in people, and that is not just to agree with the common standard or the common whatever. To actually, like, if you've got something that goes against the norm or is going to stir those emotions up, don't be afraid to say that. Like the fact that people are getting, actually, this is something that James Smith PT, who most people would have heard of, and for good reason, that's exactly how he has done what he's done in maybe the last probably 12 months realistically, but over the last maybe 2 to 3 years of his growth, is that the posts that he makes, and he said this at one of his talks, the posts that he makes, the ones that gets him the most unfollows are the ones that also bring in the most leads for his business. They're the ones that actually stir up the correct emotions in the potential clients to actually say, you know what, this guy just sees it differently. I want to work with him. But in order to get that influx of leads and to get that influx of new people or people in your business, you actually have to have a stand for something in the industry. It can be something big like him, where he just absolutely flames down those terrible companies that we all know, and like the supplement companies and all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't have to be something as grand as that, but it's just standing for something. It's not promoting the same content that everybody else is promoting. It's the great thing with social media is that we have so much available information, but it's also it's a double-edged sword, because there's so much information. There's so much of the same information. There's so much wrong information. There's so much all of that sort of stuff. So don't be afraid that if you have some different viewpoints and they're sound and they're based off principle-based decisions and critical thinking and all that sort of stuff, like don't be afraid to go and put that out there, just in the hope that you don't offend someone. Like fuck that, throw it out there. If people are getting riled up or confused or whatever, like that's a good thing. Like you're stirring up different emotions. You've got now a different point of view or a different effect on other people that not just the mainstream of everybody's doing. So I really like those posts. And I also think being able to, something that Paddy D does so well, I've tried to make them and I've sat there on my phone like, how do I get this in 2 sentences? But mine end up turning into a 200-word fucking blibber blabber about some shit. The ability to condense it into literally about 50 characters is really impressive. So there is also a skill in being able to do that and actually land your point as quickly as those guys do. So that's just something that I thought about. But yeah,
it's very interesting. Pat's a great example of how making statements that are absolutist in nature and that are also contrarian is a really good way to get into fights and to get attention. And so I think he does a really good job of it. But the balancing act that I think a lot of people maybe miss is that is that you want to make it like a provocative start to a conversation without then just shouting everyone down. I think that's where people, it's like you want to kind of like jab and then just dance around, but a lot of people like just holding into you. You know? And I think that's where the skill is, maybe, is to be a little provocative, but then also listen to other people's opinions. Like there was a thing that went around the other week about whatever you do, don't ever stretch. It's like, but you know, a pinch of that's actually super good. And so, yeah, but it's interesting that is what gets a fair bit of play.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that a little 1-2 combination as the highlight reel clip for promo.
Yeah, I think it's something I've been playing with is like those little quote posts, like Jamie was saying, like trying to get an idea down to 10 words and make it fit in a picture that's big enough to read on your story timeline. And like you said, the method I've tried to take with that, I don't always get it right, and it takes refining, and sometimes even I haven't maybe thought through the idea enough, and it's me thinking through it sometimes, which is, don't be afraid to do that either with your social media content. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to sit on it for 12 months before you kind of put it out there. But yeah, so it's that idea of like the quote itself is like pretty obnoxious sometimes, and then you actually go read the caption and it's like, oh, okay, that's a pretty balanced concept and a thought through idea, and it sort of makes sense. So you sort of get a little bit less pushback, but you get enough of that person to be like, oh, fuck this guy. And then they read it and they're like, oh, actually, it's not so bad. So that's my approach with it. I think, I don't know, Jamie, I think you know Pat pretty well. I feel like he's just a bit pissed off that he's
Pat doesn't give a shit about it. Pat will throw rocks in any direction from any fucking glass house anywhere. He doesn't care.
I think Pat Davis is the one dude you don't want to lock in his house for 6 months and then give him an internet connection. So yeah, I think it's walking that line of humility in there as well, and like an openness to be wrong that is important. But one thing I said yesterday, and I don't want to repeat myself, but obviously there's heaps of other people here, is with all of your social media content, if you're a coach, maybe don't base your social media content off guys like my page is more for my clients. STC Fit Learning is for coaches. But like if Jamie and Durham are on here talking about influencing coaches because they educate people, try not to go down that road with your stuff if you're looking to get clients. Too many people at the moment, I think, are trying to impress other coaches with their content, and they're not actually impressing their clients at all, because they either don't care and it offers no value what you think you know to the client. And like, unless you're at a level where you want to coach other coaches, you're not actually attracting the person you're trying to work with.
I actually said this on our Coach's Corner, but there was actually a phase where because of what I was posting on the Melbourne Strength Culture page, we actually got more internship leads than we did coaching leads for a good chunk of time. And that was purely because of the style of posts I was writing on the page. It was more education focused, more anatomy focused, biomechanics assessments. And all of a sudden you start getting coaches that are interested in that and they want to work with you or do the internship. And it was actually a bit of a slap in the face for me to turn around and be like, holy shit, I've almost ruined the last 3 months of progress for this business because I got into this phase of just making educational based posts that are a bit deeper than what the clientele would have liked. So it's really important to actually speak the language of the people you're trying to attract. That's probably how I like to think about it. If you want to attract fat loss clients, you need to start discussing fat loss principles and all that sort of stuff. If you want to attract muscle hypertrophy based guys, you start talking about hypertrophy and all that sort of stuff. Like it sounds simple in nature, but it's very easy to forget and actually action that forward with your social media.
I'd love to see that graphed at the moment. Over the last 6 months, the explosion of all of us coaches just flexing so hard to other coaches on how smart we are. It's just one big flex. I've never seen the like of it in history. You know?
Yeah.
But we've forgotten about customers because we can't really get them. They're not front of mind. They're not coming to see us next week necessarily. So it's just let's show other coaches how clever I am, which is nice. But it's all a little bit circular.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
Has anyone in the audience got a question for any of the panelists or Dave, that was a great just viewpoint there that led us into something real good.
You guys, was somebody else going to talk?
No, Con, you go. You've got the screen,
Okay.
mate.
You guys kind of spoke about it earlier with what you guys look at for hires. But what do you guys think is the difference between the people that go through your programs and succeed once they get out of it and the people who don't so much?
Grit.
I like that.
The people that have got grit, they're going to succeed no matter where they go. We've had guys that have not made the cut. I've gone through our mentorship program. They've not made the cut as a staff member because it's 100 people applying a year, and we generally hire one person. So it's a 1 in 100 odds. They've not made that, and they've gone on to have successful careers in the AFL, and then have big shots because they had grit. I sacked an intern once who was a bit slack and just booted him out of the internship. He sent me, and I'm not going to name names. He cried as I sacked him, and that was not a fun time for either of us. He sent me an email a month later, and he said, "Thank you for sacking me. It's the best thing anyone's ever done in my life. I really needed to take a long, hard look at myself." Every year he gets back in touch with me and tells me what he's doing, and he's crushing it. He's doing great because he had that grit. So I think grit's the thing.
I'm going to go a little deeper, which is maybe where that grit comes from that some people have and some people don't. And I think that is a conscious awareness of your values and then how what you do services them. So if you don't know what your core values are, you maybe are a little bit lost in terms of what you're doing. And we use this model for clients, for trainers, for everyone to actually identify what actually fucking matters to you. And then if what you're pursuing in your career doesn't facilitate those values, then you're never going to be successful.
Yep. I was actually just going to say self-awareness. I think it's the most important quality, and it fits very well with that answer. And Con, who asked this question, has actually done my program, so he knows the value that I put on self-awareness. But the ability to actually critically analyze your own position, your situation, why you're in the situation you're in, how you can take an actionable step forward, what you can actually do to progress from where you're at. Because we all have the same skill sets, we all have the same opportunities around us. It's having the ability, as Ben said, like to look at yourself and be like, why is that actually not occurring? Why am I not getting leads? Like it always comes back to you at some point. So being able to analyze yourself and critically analyze yourself from an objective viewpoint, I always think about it like removing yourself from the situation. Meditation teaches this and all that sort of stuff, but actually going above you and being like, why are you actually in this point? And taking steps forward from there. So that's sort of how I would.
If you find yourself in that situation,
put that in a far better verbiage than I did.
I want to piggyback. I want to jump in and quickly piggyback on the back of what we're saying here, because, and in my personal experience, I changed my work environment. I actually went to work at Absolute Health and Performance, and I see Dave Smith's in here. And that was because I identified that I needed a change of scope. I needed a change of environment as well. How important do you think it is not to, if you're in a environment that's not pushing you further, or a toxic environment, or just something where you're at the top and you're not going to get further where you are, how important do you think it is to take the leap and actually drive change for yourself? Go work in a different environment, go work with different clientele, or go work in the private sector if you're only in the elite sector, or vice versa.
Yeah, so what I was going to add on to Jamie's there is maybe a couple of resources, which is Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Super easy read. You probably only need to read like the first half of it, and then it's just more examples. And Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Not always the hugest fan of Jocko, but that's actually really good. And if you have those two things, that's going to put you in a great position for success. And then if we flow that onto like, what do you do if you're in a situation where what you're surrounded by I think if it's negative and toxic, like that's probably take ownership and move. Speaking from, we spoke about yesterday, like coming up pre-Facebook, pre-social media, pre-access to every fucking coach in the world on the internet at your fingertips, 4 million podcasts. We just had to figure it out in our environment and find everything that we could outside of ourselves. Like there's that whole thing of like, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So the one piece of advice I give everyone is those 5 people don't actually have to be physically in your life. It can be books, it can be podcasts, it can be YouTube channels, it can be whatever. Like I got so fanboy about BPAC back in the day, like having done, like, I was just like, he was the first exposure I had to someone that was like bigger than a big box gym. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's a god. And we used to laugh that like if he walked into our lounge room, we'd just be like, oh, hey bro, what's up? It's like we'd heard him talk so much. So if you legit asked me like, who's the 5 people you spend the most time with? It was probably like my girlfriend, my business partner, maybe a couple of my friends, and then like BPAC made the top 5. Like I think you can leverage that really, really well. And I think with the amount of free information that's out now, excuse my dog, you can really leverage that even further.
He's wondering why he's not in the top 5.
Yeah.
You know me.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of Jocko Willink, there's a Tim Ferriss podcast with him, and it had one of the most influential little passages in my whole life. And what it was, he was talking about, it was on training where they would rig up an entire room and they'd have a training ground, and they're in up behind a gantry, and everyone's worrying about being in the fight, and he just kind of took a step back, put his gun up to indicate that he was not active, and just had a look around. And it's that idea of what Jamie was just talking about. You're in the middle of the situation, and it's can you develop the capacity to just step out and just zoom up and be looking down on yourself and the situation from 10 meters high and just see what's happening. And I've, with mixed success, cultivated that ever since, because it just, I heard him say it, and it was just one of those light bulb moments. And it's probably one of the best things you can ever take away from his stuff, I reckon. It's just that ability to kind of hit that pause button just for like 10 seconds. Because 10 seconds is actually a really long time. And just even a second and just think, okay, what's actually going on here?
What's actually going on? I've got a question for both of you, because you brought up Jocko Willink, but have you read Goggins' book?
No.
I turned it off.
Oh, you turned it off? I was just about to say, how deep did you get when Ben?
Yeah. I'd have to open my Audible to see, but I reckon in terms of point in the book, they just left like the family home.
Oh, really? Early? All right, fair enough.
I was kind of like, this dude might need to go to a psychologist rather than write a book right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just going to spoil it, but the whole book happens, and then right at the end, he discusses like all this pain and injuries he's been in, and then he does there's like 10 pages of him just discussing the psoas muscle and stretching the psoas, and he starts talking about how it added height to his height. He was taller, and his lumps in the back of his neck started to reduce and all this sort of stuff. So I was just wondering how that would compare to the Jocko Willink extreme ownership of like taking control of everything, but then David Goggins talking about psoas stretching, saving his life.
I turned off the Goggins book after, I think that's like 3 or 4 chapters, and I've listened to Extreme Ownership, I think twice, maybe 3 times. So it's like they're a little bit far apart.
Crazy.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Yep.
Yeah. Shane, how are you?
Good, mate. Good. I work in the education sector for 10 years. Just see a lot of, I guess, good trainers, quality trainers that are just frustrated by, I guess, having to be a jack of all trades in order to just get started and survive the first 12 months in the industry. Just wondering if the industry will mature enough at some point where we can afford to pay trainers and go, I actually want to look for a trainer, I'm going to pay them a wage to work within my company or my business. like a lot of other professional industries have gone. Just wonder if we'll ever get to that stage in our lifetime.
I'll say one thing, Shane. That is my entire goal with Strength Culture, is to hire staff. They're not subcontractors. I don't want them to be subcontractors. It's everything that, again, the type of person that I was, and what you just said there is that it's an immature industry. 100% it's an immature industry. Like when you compare it to
something new.
You compare it to the American private industry. There's guys that have been there for 20, 30 years and have had rungs of employees under them that have gone on to be successful or stay with them or whatever. Maturity is the exact word that we should be using in that state, because in Australia it just doesn't happen. So I don't know if it will get there. It probably will get there to a point. These smaller gyms need to continue to pop up and operate at a high level and create successful sort of models within themselves. I think that's probably a big step. But I hope that it does. I don't really have an answer for you, but I do hope that it does. And you're not alone in seeing that, because it's something that I have definitely identified as well.
It's a very interesting one because, so I have a very strong bias towards hiring full-time staff. I'm trying to create the job I wanted to have. So you want full-time staff, you want to be well looked after. We give our guys an education budget for it to go and spend on their PD. Like, we're trying to do everything we can. I'm trying to deliver them what I wanted to get. But I think industry-wide, we still face this problem that we just discount the hell out of everything as an industry so badly. There's such an oversupply of people wanting to deliver training cheap or for free, that it just puts unnecessarily high pressure on everyone's margins. So it's like we need a proper union that goes, all right, you just won't, this is the threshold and you won't charge below that, and we'd actually be in a way, way better shape. I think there's that thing where it's kind of a race to, that race to the bottom price wise.
Yeah.
And who wins out of that. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think Jamie wants to do the right thing. I know that we want to do the right thing. I'm sure Scott does as well, but it's hard to make it all the angles work unless you've got good supplementary income. But we can't have everyone in the industry selling a mentorship course, because who's going to buy it? So that's how the three of our businesses are solving the problem, is with supplementing income with education. But that's not a scalable solution for the industry. So it is an interesting place we're at with it. I think the answer though on an individual level is just be awesome. It's still, I don't think it's that hard to be phenomenal at what we do if you really care and put the work in, because most people stop short of phenomenal. So if you really put the work in, you'll be great and you'll do well.
Yeah, I think my very first brief that I think I wrote at about 2:30 in the morning on the back of like some epiphany I had lying awake one night, probably cooked from training, was the intent to have people in a salary model within like our business. We haven't been able to achieve that yet, and I'd love to sit down with these guys at some point and even discuss how they're pulling it off. Because the margins, like Jerome was just saying, like it's a pretty fine line once you start adding in everything that comes with hiring staff members based on what you can charge in the market at the moment. The gym chains that I know that are doing it are either paying bugger all. The ones that are paying the wage that you can live off, from what I know from behind the scenes, are closing doors in certain locations and walking tightrope lines all the time. So it's probably suggestive that that's not a great business model either. Depending on, obviously, Shane, I don't know your background. Are you like an S&C coach or a personal trainer?
Personal trainer, exercise, rehab, but 10 years in education from international colleges that I teach for in Australia.
Yeah, cool. So like what I tell all my guys coming through that are just starting out is training everyone for the first 12 months is the best thing you could probably ever do for your career. If you can take Janet, who hasn't trained since she was, or done exercise since she was 13, and progress her from squatting to a bench to getting under a barbell, athletes you work with are just going to be so much easier. Learning coaching, learning communication, learning business structures, learning systems with a broad range of people, and then over time honing down into that specialist kind of area. I think all the great coaches, so when I say coaches, I mean specifically building relationships and getting outcomes out of people, not great programmers or great like nutrition coaches or anything like that. Like people that are actually on a personal level great, pull the most potential out of each individual. Most of them have spent time working with a really broad range of people. And I think it's an undervalued skill that a lot of people have. It happens in the powerlifting industry all the time. Guys that have done powerlifting decide they want to be a personal trainer, walk into a big box gym and they're like, all right, I'm a powerlifting coach. It's like, no one here wants to be a powerlifter. And like you kind of need to build them from gen pop to, hey, do you know you're strong enough to be a powerlifter now because you did it by accident? They're the most successful people I've seen come through that space.
I couldn't agree
That's
with
just
that.
my own experience.
Yeah, I just called you Scott before too. Apologies. I feel like
No, that's okay.
I couldn't agree more. It's like you learn so much from coaching unco people who hate fitness. It's such a good brilliant, because you have to learn how to sell and encourage and lead them along the trail. I mean, I made a rule for myself when I started. So I started doing this in '99, but my rule was I wouldn't call myself an S&C coach until 51% of my business was S&C. Like that was just my rule. So I spent a long time, and I was like, I'm a personal trainer. People would ask me, I'm a personal trainer, but I had the ambition of being an S&C coach once I clocked over that 51%. But those people in that first, decade, they were amazing place to learn your craft, because it was lower stakes too. You could maybe get something a little bit wrong and you'd be okay because they were more isolated. It wasn't a connected community. But more importantly, you just had to work hard at it and develop some skills just around motivating people, because they're not very motivated generally. That's a great skill.
Yeah, I'm working on one of those little short quote posts at the moment that I haven't quite nailed down to 10 words yet. So you guys can help me out with it. But just like one of the most common things we hear in this industry is like, oh, I'm shit at sales. And because it's unrefined, this might be a little bit abrupt. But I think saying you're shit at sales means you're shit at coaching.
Oh, okay.
Because like, what is coaching? It's creating buy-in. It's creating belief in your abilities. It's creating a relationship with that person that they're like, you know what? I trust you to get this outcome. So if you can't communicate that with your programming, with your nutrition, with your lifestyle interventions, like whatever it is, you're not really going to get good outcomes from your clients. So really what most personal trainers have, and it is a real thing, is like just a problem with money. It's not actually sales. And maybe if it is like that communication and buy-in, then that's an area of your business that you probably should work on. Anyway, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but something cool to think about.
I think, and what you talked about, Ben, is super important, is that, coaching is about you telling people that you convincing people, you selling people on the potential that lies on the other side of that hill. Like that they have it in them, and that you're the best person to get them over the hill, and that what's on the other side of it's really, really worth it. I mean, all three of those things are sales tasks. And if you can do that with an enthusiasm, like I think one of the things I'm always really keen to see in coaches is that enthusiasm for the process. Because if you're enthusiastic about that's going to be awesome, where we're going to get you, we're going to do it this way, it's going to be great. And that just builds. And I think that's just such an essential element of coaching. It's not just telling them all the stuff you know and kind of laying it out there. It's telling them how you're going to transport them from where they are to where they need to be. It's all sales. I was so stupid about sales the first decade, because I was doing sales, but I didn't think I was. And I was like, oh, actually, I'm doing sales.
Everything's a sale.
Yeah.
In terms of the career progression thing, and will the industry actually get to that and mature to that point? I would say to young coaches, and I know there's going to be a handful in here, but if you behave in the way in which somebody who is looking to get a career out of this, and let that sort of be a guiding light for the decisions that you make and the networks that you create and the responsibility that you take with not just the training side of things, but all the other things that go along with it. I can guarantee you that as this industry starts to mature and there are more and more gyms and more small opportunities to take actual work, like go and start working somewhere, not, I'm going to be a subby and do 10 hours and all that sort of stuff, but actually walk into, as Durham said, a full-time position. That's not just going to fall into your lap. You have to probably take 2 years, as it would with any other industry, take 2 years of actually building a career-based mindset before that opportunity is there. And all of a sudden, those things might just start propagating in front of you. As with most things in life, is you sort of just create the opportunities for yourself. So if you are frustrated that there aren't those opportunities out there, maybe also, again, self-analysis, but look at what you're actually doing. Are you creating your own skill sets and your own journey to end up in a position like that? Or are you just sitting there complaining that, oh, there's no jobs, there's no opportunities, blah, 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 blah. Because they're out there. I know a couple of gyms that would jump at hiring a high quality person who's got a big skill set that can add value and has worked on themselves. Like, they're definitely out there. So just go in with that mindset. Go in with the mindset of, I want a career out of this, and I can guarantee that things will start to change in front of you.
I think I'm slightly less optimistic than you guys that we're headed in that direction. So I actually think culturally it's maybe headed the other way, outside of the fitness industry, not within us. So contracting is becoming more and more popular. I can get online right now and hire someone from India to do my admin work for $15 an hour or whatever, versus here. Like, I think there's this to and fro of like what you guys have said is like, and we're the same. It's like, we'd love to be able to put people on salaries and take care of them and give them sick leave and holiday pay and all that sort of stuff that would just, I assume these guys have never had either, and be able to provide that. But I don't know, particularly with the economic climate that we have no idea what it's going to be like in the next 2 to 5 years, whether or not we actually ascend in that direction or we actually move further away. Like with this not disconnected model that, like, we're talking about, oh, we can do this through Zoom now, we can communicate this way, we can have coaches all over the world instead of just in the gym. Like, all of that maybe lends itself to being a little bit more, each individual is an individual and part of a team, rather than that employment model. It'll be an interesting thing to watch over the next 5 years, I think.
I think the biggest disconnection there would be the physical location compared to an online based. That would probably be there. If anybody does end up watching that or listening to that podcast with the navigation of the future, he discusses that in massive. He's like, you'll get people who are an accountant who's worked at a firm for 10, 15 years, realize they can subby off 6 different companies and work from their living room. That person's going to be working from their living room. So I think a lot of that has to do with the location and specific context of the different business models. But I can guarantee that I'm definitely pushing forward for employment opportunities for staff. And I want my guys for 10, 15 years at full-time contracts. So there's definitely, I think it's all contextual as with everything, but for sure.
I think you're right, Jamie. I think, Ben, the interesting breakdown is that Ben, you're right in that the majority of people, it's going to be tougher for, but I'm not interested in being in the majority. It sounds a bit selfish.
I like that.
So, and neither any of you guys here, you're all giving up your time to listen to this because you're not doing it because you want to be average, right? And so I think there's always that Seth Godin thing where there is a disproportionate value in being really good at what you do. It's not just 10% better to be right at the top of the tree. And so I think if you're a top operator, it doesn't matter what's happening, you're always going to be in demand, because the demand and supply overall is oversupply, really. That's the reality, because so many mediocre people want to get into this field. But the supply of self-aware, technically knowledgeable, organized, smart, great operators is actually still relatively low. And the kind of people who are going to afford your services, successful, affluent people, they want to work with alpha trainers. They want their guy or girl to be really switched on. So I think there's always going to be demand if you're top notch. You don't ever worry. I think the industry has some worries, but I think the pointy end of it will always be pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Have you guys heard of the Pareto principle?
80-20
Is that
rule.
80-20?
Yeah.
Pareto's actually it's infinite. So the bigger the group, the smaller the contribution. I think it's the square root of the group deliver 50% of the productivity. So if you expand that out, so the bigger the group, the less people you have at the top end. So when people refer to the 1%ers in terms of like finance around the world, it's like they're in the Pareto rule. It happens in wildlife, in like even the way a jungle will grow and all that sort of shit. It's just like one of those unwritten laws of life. It's worth writing down and looking into. And then like Jerome says, like, I want to be in that group. I don't want to be in that bottom 50% groups. Like I want to be in that top 3 out of 100.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll go have a question if no one else is.
Go for it, Jack.
Yeah. So no, you guys have been really good presentation. I'm just quite interested to see what you guys each would say to a person that just is about to graduate from exercise sports science. Like, what's some key tips you would say to graduates when you go into the work field?
Start coaching. Start coaching 10 years ago. Get as many coaching. We've already sort of discussed my point here, but get as many coaching reps as possible with as many people as possible, with as many cohorts as possible. Like, become a supreme generalist first. Get as much GPP work in before you become an SPP specialist somewhere. And don't try to accelerate that process. It's probably going to be a 3-4 year endeavor to actually get to a really high level specialist rather than just a 6 to 12 month sort of thing. But yeah, definitely coaching. Coaching will teach you more about the industry than anything else ever will.
I'd say start coaching, and while you're coaching, go really deep on your functional anatomy, because it's still astonishing how many people don't know what the muscles are, where they are, how they operate, or how to train them. It's like, you got to know that stuff. So you can stand out just by really having an appreciation of that, without having to then write people an essay every time you talk to them about it. You know, just that real first name basis with how the body works. You've got that, plus, you know, how people's psyche works. And that itself, like James said, that's a 4 or 5 year project to do those two things and do them really well, and make your mistakes and then go, right, I need to change this, change that. Yeah.
Jack, what direction do you want to take, man? Like personal training, S&C?
S&C. I want to work with youth.
Okay. Yeah, so outside my specialty, Jace, my business partner, has an exercise science degree. I'm just a Cert 4. The way I communicate when we teach the Cert 4 is this is your white card to get onto the job site. And from the other people I know that have done exercise science and working with Jace for 10 years, he'll tell you he's just an overqualified personal trainer. So I think having that attitude, I don't want to like devalue the fact that you've just done 4 years of study or anything like that. And like something that I've always envied working so closely with someone who did and when I didn't was the ability that he just learned how to learn so much better than me. It took me so long to be able to learn at a capacity that he did. So that's a huge, huge positive outcome. But if you were able to look at your degree as your white card onto the job site and then like take the guy's advice and just start coaching people as like, all right, this allowed me to start, but I'm starting. I think that puts you in a really humble position where you're willing to learn and grow as much as possible in that first 6 to 12 months, taking every opportunity, like the guy said, work with everyone, be a generalist, do well with everyone, and then grow from there. I think is the advice I would give someone in your position.
And I'd say, you know, if you're interested in the strength and conditioning side of things, a really good way is to start doing proper strength and conditioning training. So get a coach involved, and that can be wherever. Obviously, we deliver that. Everyone, you know, here does deliver in some way, shape, or form. But actually doing the training as well. I think it's all very well to know all about it, but to actually do it is a huge learning advantage as well. So that's always pretty useful. and experiment on yourself. Like, just play with what works, get a feel for everything. Hang around with people with different opinions too. Like, I think I learn heaps when I hang around with powerlifters. There's quite a lot we don't have in common in terms of our approaches, but there's so much other stuff you'll learn, and I think that's super valuable. And you'll learn hanging around with a Pilates instructor. You'll actually learn some stuff as well. I think it's good.
Excellent question there, Jack. And I'm just going to chime in one thing there as well. Mate, networking is probably one of the biggest things as well. You never know, your next boss might be in this room. And I once heard this from Durham. He said, treat every job interview. So that is something to be aware of as well. I'm going to give it one last question that someone might have. We're going to finish off with a bang. Has anyone got a good one for us?
I don't know if it's a good one, but I'll ask a question.
Let's put some pressure on it now.
Got to be good, Jake.
A little bit different, I guess, from all the other questions we've asked. You all run some pretty a very good business, and you all came up as coaches. How did you go about drawing the line between I'm a business owner and I'm a coach, and how much did you have to pull away from coaching to put into the business, and vice versa?
I drew the line about 2 months ago at the start of COVID, when I realized that nobody else in the business was going to make as quick a decision as I was going to or needed to transition the business into the switch that was necessary to keep us moving in the direction that we had. For context, I've been at Strength Culture for 4 years. I definitely would have called myself a coach up until the start of COVID, but I no longer classify myself as a coach. I'm a business owner first and a coach second. In a similar way that sort of what Durham has said, where he was like, he wouldn't call himself an S&C coach until he was making over 50% of his clientele being S&C athletes or whatever. I would say the same. Like, it's not until you realize that the business side of things is actually a viable set of income as well, just managing this thing better and all that sort of stuff for us, that I realized, holy shit, I actually am running a fully fledged business here. I probably need to put this business hat on a little bit more often and more regularly and make some harder decisions. Some of the steps that I took to do that could be constructive for you guys is start to buy more business related books than anatomy, physiology, and all that sort of stuff, and start to learn more business related things. I know in your position, Jacob, that potentially that situation is going to be coming up somewhat in the next couple of years. So maybe that transition needs to begin, where you start to absorb more business related things than more hard skill set based things as a coach. The other thing is, I would say, and I definitely fell into this trap, is I was one of those guys that would just go to every course. I'd go to every course, every seminar, do everything. I would sit at the front. I still do it. I sit at the front. I ask questions. I make sure that everybody knows that I'm in their crowd somewhere, because I want to learn and I want to network and I want to do all that sort of stuff. Like, that's just how I approach courses. And I never really invested in business development or personal development in that sort of sense. And I really wish I did. I think Strength Culture could be a far, far bigger, further, more progressed business as a whole if I had made the decision to invest in business earlier. So if you are starting to head down that road, maybe next time you decide to do a course, don't spend $600 on a 2-day assessment course. Go and spend $600 on a 2-day sales and marketing course or something like that, because you'll probably end up making more outcome in terms of revenue and all that sort of stuff working on your business systems than just always working on your hard skill set. So
I couldn't agree more. I put my ego in the wrong place to it. Like, I was all my ego was about how good I was as a coach. And it was like being the business owner was like kind of a sidekick to the coach, if you're making me a schizophrenic. And I just had that all wrong, because then your coaching suffers anyway, because you're always stressed because the business isn't going well. My mentality on it now is my job is I'm a business owner, and my fun is if I do a good enough job at that, I get to coach a bit, and so probably it's 10 to 15 hours of actual coaching, and then another 45 of running the business. And I think that's the path, you know, and everyone's going to be different. But if I could go back and slap young me around the face a bit and slap some sense into him, I'd say get more serious about the business side of things earlier, and you'll be way ahead later. And then you can, you know, maybe have the situation where things are going well enough that you've got the luxury of doing as much coaching as you like. Because I personally really enjoy the coaching. I get a lot of my energy out of that. I hate not coaching, but I don't have a lot of energy for it if I'm exhausted because the business is failing. So being comfortable putting your ego in that business owner box as well, I reckon.
Yeah, I think I'll probably come at it from a different angle. I would still consider myself a coach, but I coach both clients and coaches. I actually have a permanent vision board as my lock screen on my phone. The top right-hand corner of that reads KPI, coach, educator, athlete. So they're the 4 hats that I'll wear. We talk about balance a lot, and I think balance is a fluid thing. And balance comes from adjusting different dials at different times and turning things up and turning things down. So certain situations where it's like, okay, for the next however long, I have to commit to being an athlete because there's a competition. Other times it's committed to being the business side of things. And then other times where it's like my coaching needs some work or whatever. And I probably came from a place where business systems and analysis and stuff like that came pretty naturally to me. I actually had to probably work a little bit harder to be a better coach. And I was starting to we were getting into this education space, and I was kind of like, I'm starting to teach people that are fucking better coaches than me. So I need to go and learn some shit. So that sort of happened as well. So I think, depending on where you're at, if something similar has happened to me as Jamie during the shutdowns, I actually was lucky enough, or I guess not lucky enough, like I qualified, so I got it for some government stimulus, which meant with my coaching business, I was actually capped at what I could do. So I had to decide, like, all right, this is the amount of the amount of clients that I can possibly have right now. And that won't change now. It's like, that's the cap. If you want to go do more than that, and that's my personality, I always want to do more. I can't sit still. It's go and work on the business and the business development and create new stuff in that space and build that area. So that sort of evolved naturally. But like, yeah, if you're all in as a coach right now, start giving yourself exposure to personal development and business development as much as you can. It sounds super weird, but like, I subscribe to the Harvard Business Review. I was talking to the guys today, is like, every 2 out of 3 articles are absolutely useless, but there's one in 3 or 4 that there's a concept in there that's absolute gold. So like, in 15 minutes of reading last night, for example, just to give you guys an idea of like, don't just look within the fitness space for this either. Because like, let's be honest, like in the fitness space, we're not that good at business really. When you look at like the broad scope of things, like you guys said earlier, it's a pretty immature space. So this was just an article about potentially why you're getting turned down for jobs or promotions or being given work. It was like identifying what you might be lacking. So there's empathy, logic, or authenticity. And I was like, they're exactly the same 3 things as why people leave clients. Why clients leave coaches. It's like, you'll present one of those, so they either don't believe in the skill set, they haven't bought in that you're being real, or you're not putting enough empathy into them. And that one of those 3 things will be why they leave. That came out of a business manual. So I think opening your horizons of where you're going to get your information from, like Jamie's talking about earlier, random podcasts about, WordPress, that have huge carryover into the fitness industry. So I think, yeah, expand your horizons outside the fitness industry as much as you can.
Brilliant. I'm going to say a big thank you to the panel. First off, Durham, Ben, Jamie. That was absolutely fantastic. It went better than I could have imagined. There's a lot of nuggets in there for everyone to learn from. And the best thing is we're learning from you guys who are at the top, but it doesn't stop there. You've just opened our eyes up to a whole another level, a new world of things to think about for us young up and coming coaches and everyone else who has come up with probably the idea in their head, what am I going to do after COVID? How has this changed the landscape of my job? So a big thank you to you guys for giving your time up tonight and then over the last 2 weeks as well to have a discussion with me. Again, I encourage everyone to go and check out all 3 of those discussions. These guys, they're incredible humans and they're all running really great businesses as well. Thank you to everyone for joining us as well tonight. Always appreciate the community aspect of this and the culture we're creating, I guess, to bring the standards of this industry further up the ladder.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
me.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. The last couple of days have been unreal.
Thanks, Ben.
There needs to be more of this.
That's great.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I'm going to leave that there. Jamie's going to go. Thank you.
Durham, we want to know how your quad session is tomorrow.
I'll tell you tomorrow.
I want someone to send me this shoe challenge.
Nothing higher than RP6. You don't need
Okay.
Jamie or somebody, I need you guys to send me through this shoe challenge, please.